Tales Fantasy. You're so ugly when you cry. Chapter 3. 3 years later. My 18th birthday was in 12 days, and that was the last day of my life. Already, the Alphess had signed me off to some rich family or another. She'd offered me 3 different omegas, 2 boys and 1 girl, and yet she hadn't chosen the one I had selected. She hadn't chosen any of the 3. It had been another ploy to make me feel as if I had any voice at all, only for the hope to get lodged in my chest, another wound that I was diligent to hide. Roni, still a minor, had already been sold off. Even the Alphess couldn't escape child prostitution laws, so he and his partner had gone on an elaborate study trip. Roni was an assistant, as his new spouse finished up his graduate degree. A lawyer, touring Baroque architectural museums and documenting flight patterns of geese? These graduate students were certainly ambitious these days. No. Roni had been shuttled off on some up-and-coming lawyer who had found himself working for a family that might as well be an organized crime syndicate. To tie him to the Alphess, she'd gone so far as to offer up her underaged son. The only reason I did not sabotage the wedding and escort the police to our house myself was that I had met this young lawyer. Young, but still an adult, still 7 years Roni's senior. When I had grabbed his hand and ground its bones between my fingers, I had seen the discomfort in his eyes. It remained for the entire ceremony. This look that he couldn't tell if what he was seeing was real life. Roni bawled his eyes out during the entire candlelit ceremony. My brother was many things. A romantic, most of all. To be sold off in the dead of night, with only 3 witnesses to his wedding, his bags packed by the door, was the final strike to his honor. All my life, I had known we were headed into waters such as these. All my life, I had known the hardest days were yet to come, but when they finally did, I was still the same, still powerless. Perhaps Bana Vendetta had been right about me. Perhaps there was something I could have done differently. I was just too broken to see the path forward. Perhaps it was destiny to become the thing I hated most. In 12 days it would be my turn. Roni, in some ways, had gotten lucky. He wasn't expected to produce heirs. His husband was a beta, after all. But me? Me? The Alphess had assigned to me a boy. Yet another lie. She had once made it sound as if adoption and artificial insemination were valid choices to produce heirs. Roni or I could do that. It didn't have to be left to just one of us. I should have known. It was another carrot dangled above my head. Another lie I knew had been a lie. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. Even when I was younger, my temper stronger and harder to quell, I had always given the Alphess the benefit of the doubt. I had always wanted to believe in her, and believe in her belief in us, her children. All I could do now was wait until the day my mother signed the marriage papers. I would ensure my betrothed's family would be allowed all the money of a widower. One final attempt to fight back against the woman who controlled me. And then I would die. I had already picked out the cleanest, most surefire method. It would bring about the least amount of blood for the servants to clean up. It would be quiet, so as not to make heavy waves through the noble families. When I had jumped from my balcony when I was 11, my nightgown had saved me. tangling up in the branches below my room. The balcony doors became permanently closed after that. When I ate poison, making sure to douse the red velvet cupcakes of my family's confectionery, my body immediately regurgitated everything. I forgot I hated all of my family's baked goods, enough that I instinctually heaved them out. The poison wasn't in my system long enough to do any damage, though it did scald my throat. I was assigned a taste tester after that. But those methods were too flashy. Just a young girl, not even in control of her own death. Now I knew better. I had been collecting sleeping pills for the better part of 4 months, unable to sleep all throughout my final days of school and all the tests. My marks suffered for it, but none of that mattered. My grades hadn't ever mattered. I had never mattered. In less than 2 weeks, this would all be done. First, however, I had to watch Banna Vendetta be married off. Her birthday had been yesterday, and though her family had no money and no assets other than a simple bread shop known for a more savory selection than any other noble family, she was still a noble, a young Omega. She was allowed to marry a girl, of course. Nobody expected anything from her. Her twin brother was a diligent Alpha, already making waves in the most renowned military college. Banna was allowed the freedom of choice. I was here to be happy for her. The wedding was in a park with no flowers, just a hill and a gazebo. This was the venue of many commoner weddings, and it suited Banna very much. Her hair glowed so ethereally under the sun, I wondered for the first time if it was fake. How could anything be that red? But as one looked closer, the red was not just red. There was gold and brown and orange and even black. Each color shimmered into the next, on the same strand even. Her curls, which I had remembered were always springy and flying every which way, had been eliminated. It made her appear much older, though her cheeks were still round and freckled. I hoped she never lost that chipmunk face. She was adorned in white, glitter slathered over her arms like she herself was the confection at this party. I tried to stop seeing her as a sweet dessert to be presented to the attendees, but even the way her shoes had eye-catching bows on them horrified me. Her slender neck was on display, and nearly everyone in attendance could see the shape of her waist. Where were the layers? The modesty? I saw more than one pointed, drooling stare, and it almost made me turn around and walk away. I laughed silently to myself, wondering how I had never noticed the obscenity of a family handing away their Omega child in public before. But the girl she walked with was all smiles. An Alpha, one whose pheromones were citrusy, like lemons or cat pee. I personally could not live with that scent for my entire life, but this was the girl Banna had chosen. At least she smiled. At least she walked hand in hand with her. The words in the ceremony washed through my ears, sounding more ominous than even Roni's vows. How had I never heard the carnivorous slant to each and every line, each promise beholden only to the Omega, for everyone knew Alphas were allowed to do as they pleased. Last on the list was the signing of the papers, signing her rights away to a new family. Why was Banna's family not in attendance at her own wedding? The couple turned to face the crowd, and I met Banna's eyes. It startled me how dark they were. The reddish tint was gone. Perhaps it was too sunny, or perhaps she was wearing too much makeup. I had never seen her eyes painted like that, but the expression was overall similar to that straight-past calm that had so infuriated me when we were younger. In pettiness, I had strayed far, far away from her, at each and every gathering. Even once our families made peace with one another in high society, I did not stray. It was better like this. Banna Vendetta did not need some powerless coward in her life, one who could only despise the world and do nothing about it. I wished her a long life of happiness, a long life away from the nobility, away from the constrictions of the past. Meeting her eyes now, I gave her a smile, hoping it looked as genuine as I felt. Her feathered quill dripped ink onto the table and her fresh marriage papers. Banna stared back at me, her eyes bugging wide. I turned and slipped away. As I hiked back down the hill, I stepped over one particularly giant glob of goose droppings when a hand snagged my wrist from where I dangled it in the air for balance. Thrown off course, I could only turn, slapping whoever had snuck up behind me with my long hair. She took it with hardly more than a blink. Banna in a wedding dress. Where are you going? She demanded. I blinked. What are you planning? Don't lie to me. My gaze landed on where her freshly candied nails encapsulated my wrist. What? Banna huffed, swishing her straightened hair off her forehead. You know what I'm talking about. Mrs. It's still Banna, she said. To you? Well, that certainly was not true, but whatever. I dipped my chin, forcing my knees to bob slightly. She wouldn't let go of my hand, though I tried to shake her off. Well, if you'll excuse me. Nuh-uh. Her grip held strong, though she teetered on her delicate glass heels. Heels on hills? Not the safest idea. Not until you tell me why your face is like that. My face? I patted my cheeks, wondering what she was seeing. I felt fine. Better than fine. I'd checked the last item off my box to see Banna satisfied before I said goodnight. I'm sorry to show up unannounced. I know my face is the last one you'd wish to see. Banna sighed, stamping her heel into the earth. She probably got it stuck. Her form-fitting slip of a dress opened at the leg. I didn't know it did that. What was this thing she was wearing? It looked like a nightgown. Wait, is this a nightgown? Just like that, Banna's huffing turned into pouting. She crossed her arms and, yeah, this was definitely a nightgown. What could have possessed her to show up to a wedding ceremony after rolling straight out of bed? But that didn't explain the makeup or the straight hair. This was a choice. It was last minute, she grumbled. It works fine, doesn't it? Why does all clothing have to be fluffy anyway? I raised a brow, gesturing at my attire. You could wear a suit. How had we gotten to this point of bickering? Years had passed since I had allowed myself to be in the same airspace as her, and yet it felt as if no time had passed at all. Now we were older. Now we knew how to bicker. It was as if we had grown, side by side, learning all there was to learn, seeing all there was to see. Two parallel tracks, engines carrying us the same speed, the same destination. Was this normal? Did other friends do things like this? There was no one who wanted to tempt the Alphess's ire, and so I had never been the center of a friend circle. I couldn't compare it to anything. Banna couldn't be compared to anything. I'd have to shave my legs to wear a suit, she said, just as 3 strolling couples passed our hill. In scandalous fury, they covered their ears with their hats and bonnets and ran so fast they trampled the goose poop on the path. I don't like the way the hair pulls on the fabric. A smile crackled over my face. It hurt. When was the last time I had genuinely smiled at anything? You get used to it.